Hi everybody, I'm Mike Shields here at Cannes as part of my special video series sponsored by View Planner. I'm here with Josh Campo. He is the CEO of Razorfish. Hey Josh, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks, Mike, for
Thanks for being here. So let's talk big picture Cannes themes, and then we're going to dive into some specifics on media. Tons to talk about AI here, obviously. It's something you've been tracking. I know that trying to make sure that we're actually not talking about ridiculous things or hype or just using it as a buzzword. What do you think we're maybe not talking about enough, or what is exciting you? What is making you nervous about what we're discussing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing on AI, as you know, we've been talking about for a while, is there's a lot of immediate and practical application. I think last year was definitely a big hype year for AI.
A lot of people didn't actually know what they're talking about, possibly.
Didn't know. And you had a lot of just kind of almost pie in the sky type thinking out there, which is fun.
Yeah.
I would say this year, we have not left the hype cycle, but we are certainly balancing it with a lot more practical discussion. I still think there's a lot of theoretical conversation. And I think where we would like to see more is, there's things you can do today with artificial intelligence and specifically with Gen AI that maybe are not as fun to talk about and not as big as, theorizing about an AI agency, but there are very real applications we want to bring to clients and also really bring internally to our teams.
Do you think it's not moving as fast as people would maybe like because it's scary? Is it hard to use? Does it require so much change that people don't know where to get started?
I mean, I think you hit all three.
Yeah.
It is a bit scary. There's certainly a fear aspect. We've all seen the Terminator movies and Skynet.
Right. Or the fear of getting canned.
Or the fear of getting canned, which is the other view, right? So I think there's a natural fear of a really large change. And I think appreciating that it is a tectonic change, not just for us in the marketing and advertising space, but it's a tectonic change for the world, really.
All industries, yeah.
All industries.
And right, how we live in society, et cetera, yeah.
Yeah, so that fear is not hard to understand. You can see why it happens, but I do think we have to quickly move from fear to embracing,
right?
To be relevant and keep up to date. But I think that fear is also amplified by perceived complexity. These, language models and the technology that sits behind them is quite complex. But I do think our technology partners have done a good job making it very accessible.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to be talking more with our technology partners than we have ever before.
Right.
We've got to be watching them to make sure that we're being responsible. But we got to be, again, it comes back to engage with it, and look for the little things you can do to just start experiencing it every day. I use AI to help summarize my email inbox almost every morning and afternoon, highlight, things I need to respond to. It's a really small thing you do, but it's a incredible time saver.
Yeah. And
you get more and more comfortable through it. Now I'll use AI regularly just in my personal productivity to, find me this deck where I presented this. And, it goes out.
Yeah, instead of searching for 5,000 emails, exactly. Find the attachment and all that.
Going through my downloads folder, which is, 5 years old. And does every deck.
One area, you kind of hinted at this, one area where it is racing ahead is the big platforms are incorporated into it's hitting media buying and planning and optimization really fast, which seems good. Seems like that leads to a more effective marketing world, but Is any of that make you nervous that you're losing a little bit of control and transparency at a time when everyone's worried about privacy and stuff like that?
I think worry is one aspect. I think that this is where there's a lot of conversation this week about responsible use. Responsible use seems to be a phrase that people love to say.
Yep.
We need to start talking about the substance of what that means.
What do you actually do? How do you be responsible?
Yeah, I mean, this we were having a conversation the other day. Apparently, 12% of submissions to Cannes were flagged as leveraging Gen AI. That's potentially a shockingly low stat.
Right.
But how do you define use of Gen AI?
Yeah, and does that necessarily mean it's nefarious, or just helping someone trying to simplify things?
helpful in getting to insights that informed a brief, which is a phenomenal application of Gen AI when you're looking at large quantities of data, or did it create all your assets for you, right? So like responsible use to me is one of these things that will help us feel better about the automation, some of the feelings of black box or lack of transparency, and where is consumer data going as much as our proprietary brand data. If we can start defining frameworks and guidelines around what responsible use means, it'll become a much more real world term for people to be throwing about as what they do.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit more near term. One thing you definitely notice here at Canada is a bigger presence from creators than probably ever. I wonder if are you still seeing a big divide? There's a generational shift happening with the way people entertain themselves. It's already happened with YouTube and TikTok playing such a central role for young people and creators especially. Are brands where they need to be in understanding that versus still being sort of TV centric? I almost wonder if TV's growth has got them off the hook a little bit and trying to move in their strategies, or does that make sense?
I mean, it makes perfect sense. I think that brands are, as always, on a journey. And I think that there's a spectrum of that understanding. I think with a lot of the brands we talk to today, they absolutely understand the creator followings that are out there, the creator economy that exists around that, the need to be in YouTube and in TikTok spaces, especially when you get to Gen Z and the upcoming Gen Alphas. So I think they understand that. I think there's a little bit of how do we bridge that understanding to action?
Yeah.
Right. And I think how do you form
brand safe partnerships? Are you set up to act in a way that
how do you behave in a way that is authentic, honors your brand, is brand safe, is quick enough or with enough speed to be relevant?
Yeah.
A lot of organizations are not set up to move that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're in a little bit of a gap period of we know what we need to be doing.
But we're built for this different era, this TV-centric era. What you hinted at this. Most of this conversation, when it comes to creators, is about Gen Z. But you've been studying Gen Alpha. Yes. What do we need to know about these scary people that are coming?
Yeah, I mean, I think first it's important to understand when we release our studies on Gen Alpha and we're researching them. For us, it's about preparedness, right? The oldest set is about 4 years from being 18, having very, independent purchasing power. Today, they certainly have a massive influence on adult purchasing power.
Yeah.
And I think what we're seeing in that is they are much more Gen Z than Gen Z.
Okay.
They have twice the number of devices that are within their reach by 10 years
old,
an early age. They consume content in channels like TikTok and YouTube. That's a much more mature media channel than, say, the Saturday morning cartoons I watch.
Yeah.
And because of that, their brand maturity is much more sophisticated. They are familiar with brands that, as a kid, I would never.
Oh, if your kids watch any kind of creators, my kids were telling me about, we should get a Lamborghini and a Tesla because Mr. Beast is talking about.
Yeah.
They're now. It's really amazing to watch.
I was video calling with my daughter yesterday, and she went to a car show, and she immediately knew. I went and found the Ferraris and the Porsches. And I'm like, that's terrifying.
We're not ready for that.
She's 6. We're way too young for that. But that brand maturity is incredible.
That's interesting.
And for brands, we've got to prepare for both a much more mature consumer at a younger age, but also one that has a much higher demand for authenticity.
Yeah.
So they will not tolerate the platitude. They won't tolerate we believe in this and we don't invest in it from a brand.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And now is the time to really do some self-exploration of your brand, understand where your purpose lies, think about how you're connecting that to creators and their purpose, and how you're showing up authentically, because you can't build that overnight. And that's the challenge we saw with Gen Z, right? Is Gen Z seemed to catch everyone off guard. With Gen Alpha, we have an opportunity
we can see it coming this time. Yeah. Lastly, is there anything else you're excited about from your learnings here, or just the second half of the year? What people are talking about in Canada, we should keep our eye on.
I mean, I think that I am excited I'm a passionate believer in the impact of AI, so I am excited to see it here. I'm excited to see a more substantive conversation. I'm excited for the second half of the year to take that even further. We've been talking with our tech platforms. I was on a panel yesterday with NVIDIA, with Adobe, and AWS. I think those are the types of conversations as agencies and brands we need to be having.
You got to have that.
And partnering with Google on AI tools that we're creating. And so I think that keeps me excited about not just the second half, but I would say the next 18 months for sure.
Totally. Thanks for a great conversation, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you.